Hello, everyone, and welcome to our January edition of our Wiki Education speaker series. This month, we'll be discussing the public understanding of healthcare. I am joined by four incredible panelists who will introduce themselves in just a moment here. But I just wanted to start off by thanking everyone for joining us. And if you haven't already, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining us from. My name is Melissa Joseph, and I am the outreach coordinator here at Wiki Education. So here at Wiki Education, we're a small a nonprofit organization, and we run a number of series, we run a series of programs and courses to connect Wikipedia and subject matter experts like our panelists. And then Colleen, if you could share the slide for me very quickly. Thank you. So if you are interested in learning more about Wikipedia or Wiki Education, and if you'd like to teach with Wikipedia, and that's integrating Wikipedia into your pedagogy and into your coursework with students, you can visit teach.wikiedu.org. If you want to learn how to edit Wikipedia or Wikidata, if you're inspired by this conversation today, feel free to visit learn.wikiedu.org. Or if you're interested in bringing Wikipedia or Wikidata course to your particular institution, feel free to visit us at partner.wikiedu.org. Thank you, Colleen. So all of our panelists here have been a part of either our Teach with Wikipedia or our Scholars in Science Scientist program. So you'll get to hear both perspectives. So I have a series of questions that I'll ask our panelists today, and anyone joining us today is also welcome to ask questions in the chat or using our Q&A function, and I'll be sure to leave some time at the end to give our panelists some time to answer those. So I would love to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and I will start with Gabby.
Thank you, Melissa. My name is Gabriela Alvarado. I'm based out of Washington, D.C., and I'm a physician and a health policy researcher. I work at a think tank called RAND, and most of the work that I do is health policy related, but with a special focus on maternal health and sexual and reproductive health.
Wonderful. And now I will kick it off to Izzy.
Hi, I'm Izidora Skracic. I'm currently based in Barcelona in Spain, and I'm a health researcher and a project manager, and I've worked both in the US and abroad. My specialization is in sexual and reproductive health, and right now I'm working on a vaccine safety project with the goal of improving trust in the public in vaccines by focusing on the safety element of vaccines. Thank you.
Wonderful. Amin, would you like to go next?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Amin, Azzam, he, him pronouns. I am a psychiatrist by training, at heart a passionate educator. I'm on faculty at three San Francisco Bay Area health science universities, where I have the privilege of teaching health professional students from a diversity of backgrounds. And that's really how I got involved with wiki editing. I'm very excited to share some of that in a little bit.
And then last but not least, Maureen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maureen Richards. I'm an assistant professor and assistant dean at University of Illinois College of Medicine. I'm the curriculum dean at their Rockford campus, and I've been working in the Wiki education system for about 7 years, I think was when I first launched my first course. So I'm looking forward to talking to everybody about that experience.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. And thank you again for joining us. So to get us started, how would you describe the role of Wikipedia in the healthcare world, and why is improving the quality of its health content important? So Maureen, I will start with you, and then if anyone else wants to answer after that, feel free.
Thank you, Melissa, for the question. I think when I think of Wikipedia, I think of kind of everybody's first stop, right? You're watching a movie or a news clip or reading a book, and some topic comes up and you go, when did that happen? Or is that a real thing? Is this based on a true story? And you search it on the internet, and almost always your first stop winds up being Wikipedia. And for most conversations, that answer is the answer that you give the other people you're talking to, and that's the end of it. The same thing happens with patients. They get a diagnosis, they get ordered a test, they receive a test result, and they Google it. And yes, there are other websites through their healthcare systems that they could go to. There's, lots of learned public health websites they could go to, but we as humans tend to go to what we trust. And if they have been using Wikipedia in all other facets of their life, they're comfortable with that platform, with how it functions, how the information is going to be presented to them. And they're going to click on it and they're going to believe what it says, which means that those of us who have the opportunity to learn to be a physician or a nurse or a public health worker or a scientist, I think have a responsibility to ensure that information that is on a freely editable website like Wikipedia is accurate and well-founded in scientific research. So I think it impacts not only us and how we search things, but patients and families and students and teachers and learners throughout the world.
Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to chime in?
I guess I'll nibble. I'll just offer that when I teach my own students about the use patterns of Wikipedia, we can look at any health Wikipedia page. There's some article traffic statistics, so you can look at sort of over any period of time how many people have read about influenza. And when you look at those article traffic statistics, there's always these 5 peaks and 2 valley pattern that just recurs, the sawtooth pattern that recurs. And then I'll say to my students, the astute medical student can figure out that why is this pattern? And it's weekdays, weekends, because exactly as Maureen said, people get sort of like these diagnoses and they go home, they read about it on Wikipedia the day they got it on the outpatient basis or whatnot. So people don't want to read about, it's not zeros on weekends. People don't read as much about hepatitis on weekends as they do on weekdays. But it's, I mean, human patterns of human behavior are there for us to see when we look at article traffic statistics. So very much our patients, their loved ones are going to Wikipedia for health information. So it really is incumbent upon us to make it as accurate as possible.
Great answer. Anyone else? Gabby or Izzy? No pressure.
Yeah, I was going to add that the just the level of accessibility, right? Because there's good data out there on the internet. Like my family members will Google something and a paywall comes up on a journal, right? Like you can't even read those things. So you end up going to sites that are open, freely accessible, and easy to navigate, right? The interface, that how it looks visually. Any of us who have ever read a scientific article, that's not fun to read or look at. Whereas Wikipedia, it's easy to navigate. You have hyperlinks. You can go down a really nice rabbit hole and kind of like look through, oh, I don't know this word. I can click on it and learn that. I can keep on going. And so just like that flow of how you can process information and that it's not restricted, it's not behind a paywall. And I think that's, at least for me, what I see as just really important to make sure we have a responsibility to make sure that what we know as researchers and as physicians translates from what we have in academic journals into this public facing platform.
Thank you so much. Izzy, if you don't have anything, I will go ahead and move on to the next question. Perfect. So, Amin and Maureen, you both have had a great deal of experience incorporating Wikipedia assignments into your courses over the years, and the impact of your students' work has been really incredible. So, can you tell us why you first decided to teach with Wikipedia and why you've continued to include it in your pedagogy? So, Amin, feel free to start, and then Maureen.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I've been at this work for over 10 years now. The origin story is kind of fun. There was a medical student that I was having a sort of a coffee with, and I always like to give Mike Turkin credit for the brilliant idea. It wasn't mine, it was my student's idea. And he's like, I mean, why are you faculty fighting us on Wikipedia? Like Maureen said, we all go there first. It's a great first pass. It's a good reminder of things that we once learned and forgot. Why don't you help us make it better? And I was like, Mike, that's a brilliant idea. And so, he was dogged in bringing some early Wikipedians and some health professionals who were Wikipedians to UCSF to learn about the infrastructure that exists in the Wikipedia world, in the Wiki Ed space. And I was sold. And I was, instead of being an individual clinician editing Wikipedia, because I'm a faculty member at a school of medicine, I felt that I could make a bigger impact by bringing Wikipedia editing to our school. And so created what turned out to be the world's first course dedicated entirely to editing Wikipedia as a med school course where they got credit for the work. And that's what got me excited about it and what keeps me excited about it. And so that's kind of how and why I continue to have health professional students contributing to Wikipedia. Maureen.
I could very easily answer this by just saying Amin taught me how to do it. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I was a second-year professor and I had been handed a course that I'll say no one really knew what the course was supposed to be, but we had to have it. It was connected to a summer research project. And as I was looking at the course, I really wanted an anchor for my first year medical students to practice reading and synthesizing literature and explaining it as it related to research projects that they were doing in a really public way. I don't think medical students get as many opportunities as maybe PhD students often get, where PhD students, you have to speak at lab meeting every week, you have to present every term, you have a thesis presentation. And I thought that was a missed opportunity for medical students to practice the language of research. And at the time I was serving as a script writer for Osmosis, and Shiv Gagliani and Rishi Desai had mentioned that they were working in some concert with Wiki, and that there were these courses that were starting, and they connected me with Amin, and I had a Zoom meeting with him to learn what this course was about, and launched my first course with M1 students that year. And I think it went well. I kind of introduced them to the 10-minute talk, and at the same time, they had to edit the page of Wikipedia that most closely related to the research they were doing that summer. I went to a second institution, my current institution, in late 2019. And then when the pandemic hit, like many institutions, we were trying to find ways to educate students without putting them in the clinic, without putting them in the classroom. And I said to my administration, I've done this thing before on Wikipedia. I think I could adapt it for clinical students. And that was 5 years ago now. And I run my next course beginning in about 6 weeks for it. And it has adapted from where we started, where I am still committed to having students practice the language of research and the practice of synthesizing primary literature to a greater audience. But there's now throughout this course a thread on combating misinformation and asking questions of reliable sources and understanding kind of the source behind the source, that you can't just blatantly accept what you see on YouTube or TikTok or Wikipedia. You should read it, understand it, and then question it further. Where did that information come from? How can you validate it? And how can you use it in the practice of your patients?
Thank you, Maureen. And I am guilty of getting information from TikTok. So thank you for that reminder. Izzy and Gabby, what made you join one of Wiki Education's editing courses for subject matter experts? And what kind of articles did you work on? Izzy, we'll start with you, and then Gabby, feel free to chime in.
So I've been obviously looking things up on Wikipedia for a very long time. And I remember in high school, I would edit Wikipedia articles just on my own. And this was about like hobbies. And then during my PhD, the Society of Family Planning, which I was a member of, it's a professional society, had an ad for, would you like to be part of Wiki Education to work on health-related articles? And so I applied, and I got to work with a wonderful Will, and that's how I got here. And in terms of the articles that I worked on, I started out by working on unintended pregnancy, and I really enjoyed working on that article because I could see all the, how many people were Googling it or looking it up every day, every week. So because it's one of the most popular articles when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. And then I also worked on urinary incontinence, and my favorite one turned out to be menstrual cups. And there was new data coming out about IUDs and menstrual cups. So I kind of updated that section of the article, that if you are an IUD user, you might want to think twice about using menstrual cups because the risk of expulsion is higher in if you're using a menstrual cup.
Thank you for sharing. And Gabby?
Hi. So I have also, I'm just going to say ditto to Izzy's story. So I also, I'm a member of the Society for Family Planning, and I also saw the same post on inviting researchers and scholars to participate in a Wiki Education class geared specifically to women's health projects. And I think that I think it's a recurring conversation that academics have with themselves. Like, are we screaming into this echo chamber? And I think it's something that's always in the back of our minds of why are we doing the work that we're doing, and who's actually reading it, and who are we serving with our research? And I've always had huge gripe with the, way that we handle publications and having to pay for subscriptions, and the average person who isn't affiliated to a school library can't pay $50 for each academic journal that they want to read. And it's a broken system. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I think that was my main driver for finding the appeal in Wikipedia. I had never in my life edited anything on Wikipedia, but always, a good consumer of Wikipedia actor stats whenever I'm watching a new movie. And I think that when I joined, I was very surprised. There's a lot of things that I had no idea, but mainly the level of traffic was one of the things that really stuck with me as I was going through this, and made me realize the magnitude, scale, and importance of this. And I think if you look on Google Scholar with people's publications, you can see how many times your article has been cited. I have articles that have been cited 3 times. It's super sad. But the magnitude of the reach with Wikipedia, and what you're doing is you're translating that information that was in someone else's article in your own article. You're translating valid research, important findings, you're summarizing them, and you're adding them to where people are going to. And so I think it's extremely valuable. I worked mainly on, similar to Izzy, women's health issues. So I edited some of the breastfeeding pages. I also started a new page. It hasn't had a lot of traffic. Wasn't really wanted, but people don't know about it yet. But I started a whole new page on breast milk storage and handling as a recently new breastfeeding mom. So I thought it was important. And some other pages related to abortion policy in Latin American countries, I've also done a little bit of editing on, and it's been a really interesting experience to see the back end of it. I think researchers always pride themselves in the peer review system that happens in academic journals, but Wikipedia has its own peer review system that I don't think a lot of people understand. So that's my very long answer. I'm sorry.
No worries at all. Thank you both. That's very insightful. And you both have made really great contributions to healthcare on Wikipedia. So thank you. Maureen and Amin, back to you. What kind of feedback do you hear from students about editing Wikipedia compared to a traditional assignment? Maureen, feel free to start.
So I think with any class assignment, it will vary year to year, how you organize it, etc. I have heard everything from my students from like, cool, this was a neat, simple assignment that I didn't know existed, to I've had some classes where students really got into the social editing process of it. My favorite part, and to reflect on the answer of my colleagues, the idea of when students realize that Wikipedia does have a form of peer review. And when, the first day of class, when we teach them, the importance system and the level of, completeness of the article and how to choose an article for editing and the guidelines for that, I think there is a perception that has probably been somewhat perpetuated by academicians like myself that Wikipedia is unreliable because anybody can edit it. But in some ways, there are enough guardrails in place that it creates an excellent place to start learning about a topic, to find places to go next with your questions and to define background information. So I've had students ask if there is a way to have them do it earlier when they're learning the difference between background and foreground questions, because Wikipedia is such a great place for that. But I think the feedback from students is really focused on what they learn about editing with a community, working with other students, sometimes at other universities and in other programs, and a realization of how the platform functions that really kind of blows their minds and really is what brings them in and creates interest in the platform.
Agree with everything Maureen has said. I just wanted to acknowledge earlier, it's cool to sort of meet Gabby and Izzy because I cite the Society of Family Planning Wiki Editing course with my students every time I orient the students to Wikipedia editing, just as an example of a health professional organization that's leveraging your expertise in improving Wikipedia. So it's just cool to meet some students from the course, from previous cycles of the course. So lots of lessons learned from my students through the years. I wrote them down here, so that's what I'm looking down at. I think one that really happens is they get really excited about the sheer impact, the number of views, the number of eyeballs that are reading the pages that they're editing. So, like in a traditional assignment, I read it and then throw it away, the throwaway assignments, right? At best, like in graduate school, maybe a grad student TA reads it, not even the professor necessarily. And so they get excited about just the number of people that are reading their work. And that's just very empowering for the students. The second thing I'll say is like Maureen was talking about Wikipedia's version of peer review. So one of the things that we do in our courses is we require students to peer review each other's work on Wikipedia. So effectively, like I'm working on hepatitis and Maureen's working on influenza, then we're going to peer review those Wikipedia pages before the course is done, so we can offer feedback on the work my classmate has done. And what happens there is they move from seeing peer review as this draconian being graded to sort of collectively raising the quality of each other's work. And they sort of realize the value and importance of peer review. And to Gabby's earlier point, my students post their peer review on Wikipedia itself, on the talk pages of the pages they're editing. So it's open peer review. And that way they practice the skill, and then Wikipedians can improve the page long after my students graduate from my course and move on. So I really love promoting that open piece as well. My students learn that it's harder than they think. They think it's going to be super easy when they start. Oh yeah, I'll just commas, periods here. And then they realize how much like the scientific process this is, where they have to read the primary literature, read the secondary literature, look at systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and then translate that into Wikipedia and paraphrase and appropriately cite those sources. So it's just kind of like, wow, this is much more robust and harder than I thought it was going to be. 2 more points. They learn to edit early and be bold. I have to remind them all the time, because the health professional students are like big perfectionists and making sure they buff and polish their work before a faculty member sees it. And I have to tell them that ain't the Wikipedia way. You want to edit early, edit often, make small edits, so that way if anybody reverts your edits, it's not changing your masterpiece, but sort of small tweaks. And I have to keep telling them, you can't break Wikipedia. You can't break Wikipedia. Don't be afraid of that. You're improving it, you're not breaking it. Last point is, I think that by the end of the courses, they move from being digital native consumers of the internet to future professional contributors. So they move from consumers to contributors, and they really just sort of appreciate the role of Wikipedia in professional information, high quality health information for the world. Maureen, back to you, friend.
I just want to, highlight what you said about being bold. I think I teach only medical students right now, and there's a lot of perfectionism in medical students. And I think the idea typically when you turn in an assignment, oh, it's just my professor who's going to read it, and she's going to read 55 of them. So if mine stands out, as long as it doesn't in a bad way, I'm fine, right? The idea of owning the changes to their page is a big stress point for every single one of my students in every single iteration of this course. This idea of, I'm going to put this out there and I have no clue who can see it. And it sounds funny to say that of this generation that has grown up, probably sharing portions of their life on social media. And some of the feedback I've gotten from my students when we've talked through this pain point is that they really truly feel they own and are an expert in their life, but they don't necessarily feel that they own and are an expert in the hepatitis Wikipedia page. And it's really an opportunity in a very public way of asking your students to share their expertise in a safe, socially somewhat controlled, with rules and guidelines platform. And it's probably one of the first times they do publicly say, no, I am going to be a physician and I have worked on this for a couple of years and I do know things that can impact the health of others. So it's a big step for them to take that I think is challenging but important in their development.
Thank you both. And you kind of both answered my follow-up question about challenges that the students may have faced and how they navigate them. So thank you both. I'm going to ping it back over to Gabby and Izzy. What did you find most challenging about learning how to edit Wikipedia? Gabby, we can start with you.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Maureen said, because it is true. Med school students, and after med school, we continue to be very type A perfectionists. And I think that was one of my main personal barriers. Like, I wanted it to be so polished, so perfect. And I spent hours and hours looking for that dream systematic review that had to exist somewhere that would like tie all of it together with like a cherry on top. So that was one major challenge, and I appreciated what Amin was saying, just like edit fast, edit often. I think that you can publish and you can still return to it with that magic systematic review, but just put it out there. And then the other thing, which I think is very common in academia and like our circles, the severe ADD. I'm like a goldfish chasing a shiny object. I'm like reading through one page and I'm like, oh, this would be interesting. Oh, I find a gap here. And then I start going through hyperlinks and rabbit holes, and I don't even remember what I was supposed to be doing in the first place. So I think being able to have like a little bit more clarity and like give yourself priorities of like, I'm going to do this and this is what I'm working on, because otherwise it can get too big, too overwhelming. So I think having a clear idea of what your objective was when you're going in to edit something, and if you have like a larger project, like knowing what the bounds of your project are really helpful going in, because otherwise you can get lost in how overwhelming and how much there is out there that you can contribute to.
Awesome. And Izzy?
I completely agree with what everybody has said about the fear of breaking Wikipedia. I had that same stress at the beginning, especially like my first edit. I remember I thought about it for days. I was like, am I going to publish now, or am I going to wait one more day until I add another citation? So I'm with you on that. I think the second part that I would add when editing Wikipedia is there's so many different levels of editing, right? So one step, the largest one could be what Gabby did, which was she created a completely new page, right? And when we create a completely new page, we are the ones that have to like, what is the structure? What should be the first sentence? What should be the second sentence? So that has its own challenges. But I think there's a lot of pages where we are the ones editing. So we're either adding information or we're correcting what somebody else said. And I found one of the things that I found difficult was, okay, I can add a paragraph and because I can see that that's missing, and that was less stressful. But then what about the part where I feel that some of the information is outdated or doesn't make sense, or I have to delete somebody else's words so that whatever I'm adding makes sense? And then there's like an additional layer of, oh, but I'm going to be deleting somebody else's words. Are my words good enough to delete somebody else's words? And so there's like that another element of self-confidence and realizing that the goal is to make the article as understandable as possible and as accessible as possible, and being able to verify your own text with citations kind of then gave me the confidence to be able to, okay, this is the time to publish. And if there is an issue, somebody will, the peer review will come back and say, oh, maybe you can edit something. So I would say that was the most challenging part for me.
Thank you both. And then a follow-up question that I'd like to pose for the both of you is, was there anything surprising to you that you learned during the course?
Yeah, for me, everything on the back end was a surprise. Like I was a regular consumer of Wikipedia, but I had never edited anything. So I think the degree of sophistication of the back end was a huge surprise for me. All the way from like how the talk pages are structured, how there's moderators, so you don't have editing wars. Even how there are like actual lists of, or grading scales that Maureen mentioned, right? Like how different pages are graded depending on their content. So like this is an A article, which means it's like really polished. It has everything. Like a B needs a little bit of improvement, or a C, a D, like there's really not much meat there. It really needs a lot of work. And so then you can kind of like navigate through these grading scales to see where you can contribute to articles that really need to be beefed up. And even beyond that, there's actual lists of pages that don't exist that Wikipedia has recognized that should exist, and they're out there. Like that's how I found my breastfeeding handling or breast milk storage and handling one. It was on a list of women's health topics that no one had ever touched. It was just sitting there, and they're like, this could be helpful for women's health. No one has created a page for this. And I just, so like there's so much structure in there. And I think that was the most surprising thing for me. I really did think it was just kind of like very loosey-goosey and it just happens and works somehow. But no, there's a reason it works. There's a lot of structure.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Izzy?
And then for me, I had kind of two surprises, and one of them was because I was working on the urinary continence article, that actual article had a lot of confusion between urinary incontinence in men and urinary continence in women. And then of course, right, it doesn't include non-binary people or intersex people or, trans people. And so I ended up going into a deep dive of how Wikipedia defines gender. And there was a lot of talk pages with people saying, what is gender? And, the gender page had been edited multiple times and is continued to be editing, because Wikipedia is a reflection of our society, right, and how we speak about people. And so I found that surprising as well as challenging. And how do we then make this article that is about urinary incontinence reflect the data that we have, but then also be very clear that it does relate to a certain sex, but not to another. So that was the gender element that I found surprising, and that's very common, right, when we're editing health articles. And then the second part was language. And this is something that I learned in the class that we did with Wiki Education, was that each language, right, so we have Wikipedia in English, but then there's Wikipedia in French, there's Wikipedia in Spanish, and every language under. So for example, if I go to the article on gender in English, it may have similar information as the one in French, but it may be organized completely differently and may have sections missing, added sections, etc. And I like that surprise as somebody who has Croatian as her native language, and I speak other languages, and I've noticed all these differences. The point made was that each Wikipedia language is independent. And so there is no goal to standardize them across languages. It's whatever each community thinks should be in their Wikipedia article page, that's the one that goes. And to add to that, I actually found that for a lot of minority languages, they, in order to show that their language is being used, they use the number of Wikipedia articles that exist in their language as a level of our language is important and people do read in our language. So that was really a nice ending to that language story.
Awesome. Thank you so much to you both for sharing that. Another question for everyone, and I'll start with Amin. What are some important takeaways that your students or you personally have learned from improving health content on Wikipedia?
I'll give two answers. The first one is the timelessness of this kind of assignment for students. You know, every year there are new cohort of students, but they're at that same developmental change of figuring out how to become professionals. And so like contributing to Wikipedia never gets old. It's always room for improvement on Wikipedia. And there's always new cohorts of students that are learning how to become professionals and use their knowledge to provide access to high quality health information. So that's the first one. The second one is something that sort of I've been grappling with even from the early years, but I still think is true today, and which is really like where science is going. And I've drawn this continuum. At the one end is the top tier, high quality, closed access, peer reviewed journals. We think our scientific truth as we know it because it's been vetted by experts and written by experts, right? And then to Gabby's earlier point, 3 people read it or something like that or cite it, right? So because it's not open. At the other end is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is mastered open, the quintessential open access resource where anybody can contribute, but then we're not sure we believe it because anybody can contribute. So the work of both the professional organizations and health professional students in training contributing to Wikipedia is moving this pole up this continuum. And the work of open access is moving those journals towards the Wikipedia continuum, or pole rather. And I think we're going to meet somewhere in the middle on all areas of human science, probably all areas of human knowledge, but at least science as we know it. We just haven't figured out where along that continuum we're going to land in all of these different areas of science. And so I'd like to think that both are leading towards high quality truth.
Thank you, Amin. Would anyone else like to add to this?
I might just throw in with the conversation about language. I've had, I think it's 3 students now that are multilingual, and for their project, they have improved both the English language Wikipedia page and the other language that they speak. Before allowing them to do that, I always talk about, okay, when you say you speak another language, would you say it's your native language or a language that you converse in comfortably? Do you think you have the language skills to practice medicine in that language? What is your level of comfort? But I think it's really important, because something that happens when those students are in a class is it really opens up that idea of kind of information hoarding that academia often participates in unknowingly, that we talked about at the beginning, that even unintentionally, when we have a huge amount of scientific literature that is only published in one language, we limit the access of that knowledge across the globe and the impact it could have on health across the globe. And so whenever I have that in a class, it's actually the most surprising wonder. It's like getting an extra present on your birthday. Like, oh, good, we're going to get to cover that in class, this cohort, and we're going to learn more about that student's culture and the impact this will have on that language. So it's a wonderful addition.
Thank you both. Gabby or Izzy, anything else you'd like to add? Excuse me.
No, I just wanted to underscore the efforts in other languages. I think it's extremely important. My first language is Spanish, and I also see the bias in academia towards publication in English, even for Latin American researchers, European researchers. We're all publishing in English because it's the language of science, and so then that also means that our peers in our home countries are often not able to read with ease what we're publishing, and it really is about just democratizing information. So if people know more than one language and know it well enough to provide medical care in that language, I would really invite you to also visit other Wikipedia language pages.
And my main takeaway is, just do it.
Perfect. Straight into the point. We love it. I'm actually going to go ahead and start taking questions that have been placed in the chat by those that are visiting today or participating with us. So one of the questions that we have is, do you ever check the work of your students on the pages that they modify?
Maureen, you want to go first, and then I'll go next?
Yeah, I can say that I always check through how they are following the Wikipedia guidelines. I think that if you're starting a course, every time I start a course, I retake the starting the course modules just to reinforce the guidelines. And I think that's important because I'm not an expert in everything that my students are going to edit on. There's no way for me to reliably check that what they're talking about in oncology is, completely accurate from an oncology basis. That's not my background. I'm a microbiologist. But I can make sure that they are meeting the requirements of the community. I will also say that my students' work, one class did get flagged by Wikipedia, where they were like, you can't have them do this. This has to be removed. And it was really a guideline infraction, which is also why I am now hyper-focused on the guidelines. But it also gave me some comfort on that you're not going to break Wikipedia front. Your students aren't, you're not going to. It is being utilized the way it should be. So yes, check your students' work, but there is support there too.
And when I started my course, I had a key decision point to make, similar to Maureen's. Do I want to limit the pages the students can edit only to psychiatry topics, because that's my expertise? Or do I want to broaden it to whatever their health area they're most excited about? I chose the latter. I'm thrilled with that choice and still do it that way now, because I can't be expert on everything. But the peer review assignment allows them to cross-check each other's accuracy. Like Maureen, I also think about guidelines to contributing. And then I also point out that Wikipedians are going to help peer review or check the quality of their work too. So when there's dialogue on the talk page, if there's any Wikipedians that are concerned about the quality of information my students are posting, I love that. It's an opportunity to talk with my students about, like, how do you respectfully communicate with the Wikipedian community, and how, just like you respectfully communicate with patients that you may disagree with about the treatment strategies or recommendations. And then the strength of your work relies on the sources you cite, not on just because you say it, right? Hashtag believe me. And so I think you use that sort of as the way to sort of help ensure quality.
Thank you both. There's also a question in the chat from someone named Samson that says, I teach research at the graduate level. Other than integrating and synthesizing information for other sources, what are some ways that students may critique that information in a way that allows them to take an independent position on the same?
Well, I mean, I think I will come back to that peer review assignment in the sense that sort of students can offer their recommendations. If I'm reviewing, if a student is reviewing a peer review and they disagree, they want to be able to explain why they disagree with the peer review and sort of dialogue about what is our consensus that we're going to come up to. So I think that task sort of does some of what this sort of person who wrote is addressing. Similarly, we have work in progress sessions in the courses where a student A can say, what do y'all think about this? Should I include this side effect, or should I actually include only the like extremely like medically serious side effects, or even if they're rare? And we dialogue. And so I think that opportunity for discussion and debate is intrinsically part of this kind of work, and that's part of graduate work as well.
So, thank you. Another question says, can you walk us through the main steps from an idea to publishing a new Wikipedia page by health professionals for the public? Gabby, would you feel comfortable taking this one?
Sure. Yeah, so I don't think I had like this like grand idea of that I wanted to create a new Wikipedia page, but as I shared, there's these lists that Wikipedia has of, missing content, missing pages that they've identified and flagged that would be helpful. And as I was going through, and they were grouped by topic, so I was going through the ones that are related to women's health. And as I was reviewing, I just came across the one that was on breast milk storage and handling. I'm a former primary care doctor. I'm very familiar with, providing counseling for breastfeeding. I've done research on public health measures and policy and support, and I also breastfeed my own baby. So I was like, I feel like I have enough of a grip on this from different perspectives that I felt comfortable starting it from scratch. And so then you just click on it, and it shows you an empty page. And so then you really just start building it from scratch. What I did was looking at a lot of other pages to kind of look at the feel of how they go, right? So like that little opener sentence that kind of like summarizes everything. Just I read a lot of other Wikipedia pages to get a sense, because it's a different style of writing than what academic writing would be, and just kind of building out the sections. And I had a lot of help from our course instructors as well, and just kind of getting a sense of the different pieces that would match. And it took me, I think it took me like a couple of months to feel like, I think the course was like 6 weeks and we had like an extension. So I think it took me like the full 8 weeks to get it ready for the universe to see. So it was very time intensive, resource intensive, and I think that it's a large undertaking. And so I think sometimes it makes sense, depending on what your aims are, finding other gaps in other existing articles that are graded as a C or as a B, where there's like a clear area where you can contribute like an extra paragraph, there's a missing source, there's something that might be an easier lift for an initial stab at Wikipedia. But I think it was a very fulfilling process to go through all of it, and it helped me learn more about all of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Izzy or Gabby, feel free to answer this. Are there any content areas of Wikipedia that have caught your eye for future edits? Gabby, I know you were talking about the list earlier and other articles that may have content gaps, but is there anything that's caught your eye that you're like, maybe I'll do that one in the future?
In terms of an actual new page or just edits in general?
Why not both? Either.
Well, I'll share about edits in general. One thing I noticed on the English Wikipedia page is that most of the citations that support data are very much focused on the US or the UK. And right, it makes sense if we were to think that Wikipedia was US based, or, you know, where English is the only language, but we know that English Wikipedia is visited by people from all over around the world. And so that was actually one of my edits that I did on unintended pregnancy. There was a section that looked at associations between unintended pregnancy and demographic factors. And I noticed that all of the citations were US based. And so then my main contribution to that was just adding 10 more citations that I found from the other parts of the world that still supported the same sentence, but it also showed that this was not just true for the United States.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I believe this may be the last question, but this is for all of you. Izzy, feel free to start. What advice would you give to someone new to editing Wikipedia, or someone who wants to incorporate a Wikipedia assignment into their course?
So with having experience editing Wikipedia myself, I think in order to start, the best thing would be to pick one sentence somewhere on any Wikipedia article that you're reading and just say, I'm going to make that sentence better, whether that means adding a citation or adding a second part of a sentence, or just adding more updated information. Some of the information says, oh, a study from 1990. And then you might find a newer study and just add that. So I would say start small, and then as you build confidence, go bigger.
Wiki Education has all the resources and infrastructure any faculty member needs from any sort of like school or university to create a wiki editing assignment or an entire course. It's ridiculously awesome and easy. As a faculty member, I'm so used to creating stuff internally, or I build it myself. WikiEd has the training modules, the course dashboard, the ability to track number of edits and number of citations, and you can even show the exact words that each student wrote on the Wikipedia page. It sort of back highlights the text written by each student. It's ridiculously powerful, and so I just sort of strongly endorse that to help students or help faculty or anybody who's considering a wiki editing assignment as part of a formal course, health or otherwise, just because it's such a powerful resource.
Thank you, Amin. That was like the perfect ad. You're like the perfect spokesperson. Thank you so much. Maureen?
I would agree with Amin on the resources. I'll say the learning management system, the course dashboard, does make it really, really easy. It's sometimes easier than the LMS I use on a day-to-day basis. So I do agree with that. And I think as a professor, it gives you a lot of latitude on how involved do I want to be in this process this term, right? You can be really, really in it, or you can be like, okay, all the modules are there, they are learning things. Obviously, it's always better to be really, really in it, but you know, sometimes things get busy, right? Like when I launched a course during the pandemic, I at least had some faith that there was learning happening, even if I couldn't be right in the middle of it. The last thing I would say about it is that I think it's really important to teach our students how to talk about science, how to do it openly and comfortably, and in a platform that can be received globally. It's such an incredibly important skill, and this is such a safe way to do it. So I think it's an important thing to teach as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking was just kind of about like in terms of sustainability of people like Izzy or like I who are researchers, and you know, we have specific projects and we budget our time for different things. Thinking a little bit about in the same way that we budget time on an NIH grant for manuscripts for dissemination, like thinking about budgeting in our projects other forms of public dissemination. And imagine if researchers, in addition to saying like, I'm going to publish 3 articles the end of this research and also say, I'm going to contribute to a public debate on this and contribute to public information platforms, I think it would be really beneficial. So maybe thinking about other ways and how we can incorporate, outside of necessarily school or just for funsies because I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, but thinking about ways how to embed this into broader systems.
Thank you. And then Izzy, is there anything you'd like to add? Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Please join me in thanking these wonderful panelists that have taken some time to share their thoughts. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending. My colleague Colleen is dropping some very helpful links in the chat if you'd like to teach with Wikipedia, learn with Wikipedia, or partner with Wikipedia. And she's also dropped a link for you to register to our next speaker series, which will be happening in February. So thank you all again, and I hope you all have a great day.